What's going on, everybody? Plasma Therapist here, and today we are finally getting some paint down on some plastic. I'm excited, I bet you guys are too, so without further ado, let's head over to my paint station. Okay, so we're all set up to practice painting here, and if this is your first time and you've never used an airbrush before, I recommend doing this exercise to just kind of get familiar with the motions of spraying your airbrush and releasing the paint. And so what you want to do is you want to practice the motion of a press, pull, forward, and then up. And the idea is that you want to release your air before you release your paint, and then make sure that you close off your paints before you close off the air. And I know when you're watching other people airbrush and they've been doing it for a while, it just kind of looks like they just press and go, but really what it is just a fluid application of the press, pull, spray, and then forward and up when they're done. Now, the reason you want to make sure you release your air before you release your paint is that if you release the paint first and then press the air, the paint is going to come out in a splatter, and that can really ruin a really nice paint job. So make sure when you do your painting, and if you're just trying out, make sure you practice that press, pull, forward, up, press, pull, forward, up. And this is something that I even did when I first started. So getting used to the motion first, and then we'll go ahead and talk about the different types of methods after the second exercise, which we'll get into right now. So the second exercise that I want to focus on today is knowing where to stop and just kind of getting used to certain points on your airbrush. If you can practice just press pulling a little bit, like about a quarter to a third of the way, right? That's going to be the first method that we're going to talk about. And then as you get used to that, go ahead, practice pulling to about halfway. And that's going to get into the second technique we're going to talk about. And all you want to do is just practice getting to that sweet spot. So the little one, and then the larger one. Now, why is this technique important? Let's go ahead and start talking about when we paint. Okay, so we're all set up to begin our paint practice session, and the paint I'm going to be using today is going to be the Alkali Gloss Black base, and the reason being is that when using this paint, I can demonstrate both techniques with one paint. Then the next thing you're going to need is what you're going to practice painting on. As you can see, everybody recommends and everybody uses a lot of spoons. Spoons are really good. If you don't have spoons and you still want to practice, next best thing you can do is cut off a bit of your runner tabs like this right here, clip it on, or if you want, you can just go ahead and hold it like that, and then go ahead and spray that down. And I'm going to demonstrate doing our first technique, which is going to be a tacky coat. What it's going to be is it's going to be just kind of a light misting over the piece, and you want to get that as even as possible. It doesn't have to be perfect because most of the times your tacky coats are going to be either a foundation or it's going to build up. As I mentioned earlier, the tacky coat is going to be the one where we press a little bit and release just a little bit at that. So the press, pull, just a little bit, release. Press, pull, forward, release, press, pull, release. Yep. So go ahead, add some paint to the cup here, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so I'm going to speed up through this processing part here so I can jump straight into the painting. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to test it on my glove there, and then I'm just going to blow off any excess dust or particles that are on the spoon before starting. Now, here I'm finally getting some paint down. As you can see, it's going on really light, and that's kind of the purpose of the tacky coat. It's really, really light. The distance I'm spraying is about, I want to say 4 to 5 inches. So here's a close-up of our tacky coat, and as you can see, it's not a full coat of paint. It's kind of a light speckly layer. You can still see a little bit of the white poking out from the base white spoon, just like that. So you can still see that the black doesn't completely cover it. It's kind of just a base layer. And so the tacky coat is going to be really good because it gives our paint something to grab onto when we're starting to spray some of our heavier coats. So I'm going to go ahead, mask back up, and I'm going to demonstrate on the second spoon one more time, one more tacky coat. All right, so here we have our second spoon. I'm testing it on my glove just to make sure I don't have any spatter on the spoon. It's good practice when you're actually painting it, just to kind of make sure the nozzle's clean. Now, I'm going over the spoon here, but instead of kind of stopping where I did last time, I just want to build it up a little bit more to kind of show you what happens when you continue to apply tacky coats over tacky coats. You start to see that it gets a little bit darker, it's a little bit blacker compared to the first spoon that we did. And it's going to show that you can kind of build up your coats this way instead of just doing a straight wet coat. All right, so there we have our second spoon with our tacky coat down. Now, the reason I want to demonstrate it with a gloss black base is because now, after we have our tacky coat down, what we're going to do is we're going to go on to our second method, which is going to be our wet coat. And the wet coat is basically exactly what it sounds like. It's going to be, it's going to go on and it's going to give it kind of that wet look. And so I'm going to go ahead and mask up, and then I'll show you what I mean when I'm done painting. So we're not going to change anything on our airbrush. The only thing we're going to change is our motion. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch from the about a quarter pull to about the half, maybe 3/4 pull when we're spraying. PSI stays the same. We're not even changing our paints. We're still going to use the gloss black base. And what I'm doing is I'm just going to put my mask on, turn on my spray booth, and then we'll go ahead and do the wet base. So let's go. All right, so on to demonstrating that wet coat. And as you see, I check it on my glove first, but then I go straight into painting the wet coat. And just like before, we're going back and forth about 4 inches away, but this time we're pulling back a little bit further than the tacky coat, and we just continue to build it up again, just like the tacky coat. And when it's the wet coat, what happens is it starts to take the paint and turn it all into one solid coat when it's still wet like that. So here's a close-up of our glossy wet look, and as you can see, it has almost like a perfect mirror finish to it. You can see the individual LEDs compared to our tacky coat there. This is the benefit of having a desk lamp light like this, is that no matter what color you're using, you can always check your work. If you can see those individual LEDs, then you know you've got that perfect mirror wet look. So here's a demonstration of both techniques in combination. First, what we're going to do is we're going to start off with our tacky coat. I usually do this for all my paint jobs. What I'll do is I'll start in with the tacky coat, give it a light coat there, and then after that's done, I'll go ahead and come back in with that wet coat. Now, as you can see, once I finish spraying that wet coat, I go back and build it back up just a little bit more so I can make sure that coverage is even. Once that coverage is even, I kind of just play around with the lights on the spoon just to kind of double check those LEDs. Okay, a couple things before we wrap up for today. One, if you're not sure what PSI to start for your paint, and let's say you have a paint that's ready to go and you're not sure, start at about 20. It's a good safe number. You can go higher if you need to see if your paint, maybe if your paint's a little bit thicker or your airbrush isn't getting a nice good consistent spray out of it, go a little bit higher. If the paint's a little bit watery, it's a little bit thinner, and you're getting kind of like what we call spider webbing, where the paint kind of creates little fingers as it goes out, then what you want to do is you want to go ahead and bring that down. And what I'll do is I made a video a while back linking some quick airbrushing troubleshooting, and so you can refer to that video to kind of see what it looks like with all the different issues you can run into. So I'll go ahead and link that up as well. Next I want to say is just make sure you practice your tacky coats, practice your wet coats. Remember, your tackies are going to be good for laying that foundation down, but also getting your metallic pigments on your gloss black. And then your wet coats are going to be great for getting that high gloss finish. So practice with them, get used to them, get comfortable for them. But the next thing is don't be afraid to experiment with it. If you're not sure how a paint's going to be, or maybe you got a brand new paint, like I just got some more of this. Where is it? This Moto color shifter. I haven't used it yet, so I'm gonna probably take those two gloss black spoons here, and I'll probably do one tacky coat and one wet coat and see which one I like better. Finally, last thing is just practice. Again, there's no shortcut to getting good at an airbrush. I probably painted definitely over 20 spoons before I even put paint on my first piece of plastic for any kit. So don't be afraid to just continue to practice. Again, if you're just sitting around and you don't have any air and you just want to practice, you don't even need your airbrush, just practice the motion, press, pull, forward, release, press, pull, forward, release. And yeah, just above all, just practice. Eventually you'll get to a point where you feel confident and you can go ahead and get started on your first kit. Alright, so I was going through and I was editing the video so far, and I felt like it was really missing that strong demonstration of a tacky coat. And so these are the spoons from last night that I did. These are the gloss black. We did our wet coat over it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you why the tacky coat is important with our alkali chrome here. So I'm going to go ahead, add this to our airbrush, mask up, and then I'm going to just demonstrate the tacky coat and why that's really important for that buildup. Alright, so here's a close-up of the alkali chrome going over the gloss black base. Now, the chrome is set to a very low PSI because that's what they recommend, and that's going to help us to build up that coat very nicely and very slowly. Now, for me, when it comes to doing tacky coats like this, I like kind of going in one direction, but if you want to and you're more comfortable, you can go back and forth. That's not a problem. It's just what's comfortable for me is just to kind of stay going in one direction instead of going back and forth. And it helps you to make sure that that coat stays nice and even as I'm going through. Make sure as you're painting it, you also follow those contours so that the coat goes on evenly. And then once you're done, you can go ahead and check your work. So this spoon is going to be kind of a demonstration of what happens when you don't properly do your build-up coats for paints that need it, like this metallic. As you can kind of see, that gloss is kind of sort of coming through in certain areas, but for the most part, it's really not the same as it was earlier. And so if I give it a super wet look over the top of everything, it kind of has a little bit of a cloudy appearance, and that's because of the thinners used in the alkali chrome. All right, so we have them set up side by side here. As you can see, the spoon on the right has a very nice clean mirror finish as opposed to the spoon on the left. This is why it's important for paints like the alkali chrome to be built up properly using a tacky coat. So there you have it, guys, the two techniques that I recommend when painting your Gunpla. If you have any questions, drop them down in the comments below, but go ahead and give these a shot. Practice with your airbrush, see how it feels when you're painting with your paints, see if they match or maybe they don't match, and see which one works best for you. Anyway, that's it from me today, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you found some value in this content. Remember, take care of yourselves, take care of the people around you, and I'll see you in the next one.